Yes, I know the quality right now is not the best, but that's because both of my good cameras are right here. This is the Sony a7 IV, which is a hybrid camera. This is the Sony FX30, which is a cinema camera, sort of. Let's talk about what that means. Okay, that's better. So, cinema cameras. As the name suggests, they're used to shoot movies, and to be a bit more broad, any kind of video. But the ones that they do shoot movies with are a lot more expensive than this. I'm thinking like Arri Alexa, Sony Venice, that sort of level. But what makes a cinema camera a cinema camera? So generally cinema cameras will have a very high dynamic range, something along the lines of 15 stops or even more. And that means that they are very good at capturing scenes with very bright parts and very dark parts without losing too much detail in those highlights and shadows. Most cinema cameras also have some way of recording RAW video. Now, most brands can't do it internally because Red actually has a patent on internal compressed RAW recording, but the rest of them can usually do it in some sort of external recording situation, usually through SDI or even HDMI. But RAW recording is very similar to how RAW photos work and just how you can have much more flexibility when it comes to editing in post. They're generally built for video, so they don't have the same shape and look of photo cameras, for example. And a lot of cinema cameras are basically just a box. Think of like a Red as literally just a box that you attach a lens to the front of it. They'll usually have multiple record buttons and just a lot of buttons in general, so you can very easily adjust any settings that you might need to on a big set. And in the case of a lot of the more expensive ones, they not only have buttons on both sides, but also even a screen because they're designed to be used by a crew. So they would have a bunch of controls on the left side for the operator and then another bunch of controls on the right side for the assistant. And since they aren't usually designed to be used by themselves, they have a lot of mounting points and ways to rig it up to add accessories such as monitors, handles, wireless transmitters, batteries, and even like things like easy rigs. Not always, but often cinema cameras don't have in-body stabilization because on big productions like that, they would actually use things like gimbals or steady cams to do that stabilization externally. They often also don't have autofocus because most cinema lenses are entirely manual, and I can't remember who said it, but autofocus can't tell a story, whereas manual focus can tell just as much of a story as any camera movement can. And finally, I think one of the things that cements a cinema camera as a cinema camera is the fact that it doesn't even take photos. It's not trying to do anything else. It knows what it is, and that's it. Some of the features that I think are useful for video and are more common on video first cameras include XLR inputs or just more audio options in general, tally lights, time code, internal ND filters, unlimited record times, good thermal performance so that it doesn't overheat, log color profiles, dual base ISOs, SDI outputs, or at the very least full-size HDMI, higher frame rates at higher resolutions, and this one's not super common, but global shutter is also one that is beneficial for video. So what makes a hybrid camera? I think this is a bit more simple. Hybrid cameras can obviously shoot photo and video, and I think true hybrid cameras are pretty equally good at both without a clear focus on one or the other. And of course there are more photo first cameras such as the A7R5 or the Canon R3, which while they can do video reasonably well, they are marketed much more towards photographers. Hybrid cameras are also generally physically similar to photo cameras. If it can do both, it probably looks like what you would think a photographer's camera would look like. Take for example, the A7 IV and the A7R5 that look almost identical. Now when it comes to the features that hybrid cameras and photography first cameras have, it's things like mechanical shutter, fast burst capabilities, a viewfinder, and higher megapixel counts usually, often 50 megapixels or more. Whereas for video, to shoot in 8K, you only need 33 megapixels, and 4K is only just over 8. So to answer the question, is the FX30 really a cinema camera? Based on the description and features that I talked about before, it kind of doesn't really fit the criteria in a few areas. First of all, while it doesn't have a mechanical shutter and it can't shoot burst photos, it can still shoot photos. It doesn't have internal NDs, which is not a requirement, but a very useful video feature. It technically does support timecode, but it's through the multifunction micro USB port, so it doesn't have any SDI outputs, which is more commonly used in more professional settings over HDMI, but the HDMI port that it does have is full size, so that's better than micro or mini HDMI. The sensor isn't too bad, but it's not nearly as good as most modern cinema cameras when it comes to dynamic range and rolling shutter performance. But given the price, that kind of makes sense, so I'm not gonna critique it too hard on that. And I think the most obvious thing is it's built mostly like a photo camera or a hybrid camera. Yes, it is definitely video first when it comes to the form factor, but if somebody who knows nothing about cameras saw this, they would probably assume you were taking photos. All that being said, Sony literally calls it a cinema camera on the body itself, so I don't really think I have the authority to say that it's not, but what do you think? So what type of camera should you get? And obviously I'm going to answer with the least exciting answer, and that's, it depends. If it's your first camera, or your first good camera at least, I would recommend going for a hybrid camera. That's what I did. I still take photos sometimes, even though my focus is video. So I got the A7 IV with the plan to expand more into the video side of things later, but I wanted a camera that could take good photos no matter what. I've since gotten even more into video, and I forgot what the line was. I've since gotten even more into video, so I don't have any plans on upgrading from the A7 IV anytime soon, but I have gotten the FX30 and I plan to continue to get more towards the realm of proper cinema cameras for my video work. If you already have a hybrid camera, or you have absolutely no interest in stills photography, then maybe a cinema camera is what you want, but they are a lot more expensive. So you either just need to have the money to spend on it, or need it for professional work that will then pay for itself, basically. That being said, you can still get great video with any decent hybrid camera. Or if for some reason you're watching this video and have no interest in videography or cinematography, then obviously get a photo first camera, most of which can still shoot video if you ever need it. But if you're purely a photographer, then by all means, get a photography camera. I don't know why you're watching this video. This is not about that. But thanks anyway. So I hope that cleared some things up. If there's any features that I missed, let me know down in the comments. And while you're down there, do all the other things as well. And then go watch this video about my FX30 video rig. Okay, bye. That was it. That was a good one.